A question I get more often than I care to admit is, how do I recover from endurance training? How do I run so many kilometers, or I guess miles, day in, day out, week in, week out, and stay injury free? So this video I'm gonna run you guys through the things I do, all the ins and outs of what it takes to recover from training, other exercises to help prevent injuries, and literally everything I do to keep me strong, healthy, running a lot and running fast for these efforts. Now, obviously, I should start with the disclaimer that everybody is going to be a little different, and that's just how it's going to go. A lot of people, bodies adapt to different things differently, naturally better at certain things than others, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but usually they do work for most people, so I'm going to give you guys what I do and hopefully help you guys out. Now, the first and most important thing when it comes to staying injury free, especially for running, is weekly mileage and volume. By far the most important. That's where I see the most injuries happen. That's where I get the most questions and how to implement certain weekly mileages into a plan without getting injured. So, obviously, there's a simple rule of thumb where you shouldn't increase your mileage more than 10% each week to prevent injury. But that doesn't answer the question, where should my weekly mileage be at to start? Now, obviously, that can vary with what races or what events or what you're trying to train for. So I recommend, if you're just doing it for general fitness, start off with something that you can do and obviously won't get injured doing. And then over time, you need to, very important, this part is very important, gradually increase volume and mileage over a long period of time. If you don't do that, you're going to run yourself into an injury. I've seen it more often than I care to admit, that people will see me or somebody else on the internet compare themselves to them and be like, oh, this guy's running 100 plus kilometers, 60 plus miles a week, and I could do that. I'm gonna do what he does. And then even if they are in good enough shape to do that, which is typically pretty rare, but if they are in good enough shape to do that, they're gonna run themselves right into an injury, especially if you have never run that much before. That's just because your body isn't used to that intensity and that impact yet. Now, I'm not saying it won't ever, but to get to that point, you need to start off with 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers a week. And even if you're not super injury prone, obviously there's that saying 10% each week, but ideally you stay at a certain mileage that you know you won't get injured at, let's say 40 kilometers a week, and stay at that mileage for 2 to 3, even to 4 weeks at a time. Especially if you know you're injury prone, that's what I would do. Start off with a mileage you're comfortable with. Obviously, not super comfortable with. You want to push yourself, obviously, or else you're not going to grow. But with a mileage that you know you're not going to hurt yourself. Now, run with that, stay with that for weeks on end. Make sure that you won't get injured. And then as that time progresses, your body will adapt. It'll get used to that impact, and then a few weeks after, increase it by a little bit. If you're running 40, run 43, 44, 45 kilometers a week. Stay at that for a while. If you feel good, then keep progressing. That is the key. I know it's hard, I know it takes a lot of patience, but that's what you have to do if you want to grow. Now, I know that covers the running aspect itself, but there's a lot of other factors. And another important way to stay injury free is wearing the right gear and having the right equipment. So obviously everyone is different, and the right pair of shoes will go a long way when it comes to staying injury free or preventing injury. If obviously there's shoes that are very low stack height, high stack height, for the most part, I don't think it really matters. It's just what you like, what's comfortable for you, and what you can stay and keep proper running form and efficiency in without getting injured. That leads into another way to stay healthy, is proper technique. If you're running with a slight compensation from another injury, let's say, or from a weak muscle here or joint there, or weak bones or whatever joints, like I said there, you are going to not only run yourself an injury, but you're going to compensate for it. And if you don't figure that out right away, it could lead to a long-term issue and permanent problem if you never address what your body is compensating for. But a bunch of videos out there for running tips, so I won't really go over that. But my best cues and what I do for running is really just a saying, and it's to prounce like a pony. I know that's funny, but it's true. You want your feet to land underneath your hip with the forefoot. You don't want to overstride and heel strike. That'll put a lot of stress on your knees, your hips, and your joints that you just don't need. So you want a flat foot strike underneath your hips, and you want to push off with your hips as well. Obviously, everybody's form is a little different. You want to relax your arms. That is my best cue I can give you guys, is to pounce like a pony, and obviously wear the right shoes that aren't worn out, that feel good, and that are comfortable for you. That leads me into my third injury prevention technique or strategy, arguably the most important one, especially for me. That's helped me, I think, stay injuries free as I have been, has been weightlifting. Now, a lot of you might think, how does weightlifting keep you injury free from running? But let me explain. Obviously, weightlifting, there's been dozens of studies that show it reduces injuries by a lot more than I thought. And I didn't even know that beforehand. I just loved going to the gym, to be honest with you. But obviously, when you're in the gym, you want to focus on, obviously for running, lower body exercises to strengthen your lower body muscles and joints. And that's mainly how it prevents injury. It's strengthening not just the muscles, but the ligaments and tendons in your legs that connect your muscles to bone, and then your bone to bone or bone to muscle, you know what I mean? And if all those little things are stronger and more resilient through progressive overload and consistent strength training, is going to lead to less injuries when running, because running is a very obviously high impact thing to do. So if your muscles, joints, ligaments, and tissues aren't used to a heavy load or pressure constantly to them, it's going to lead to more injury. Now, I'm not saying you will get injured, because obviously if you progress your running in a volume correctly, you might not get injured, but obviously things can happen here or there, and best case scenario, your body's already used to it and is used to that impact. Now, those are the most common ways to prevent injury, but now I'm going to get into some more niche things that I do think still play a big role, but obviously not as much as the others. And the first one of those is your diet. I know that might be a curveball for a lot of you, but I really do think that proper nutrition along with recovery is what leads to the best way your body can obviously recover and stay injury free. So with your diet, to stay as healthy as possible, you want, obviously, even for runners, obviously bodybuilders want 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight to build muscle, and I think that should be the same with runners too, and it should be to prevent injury. Obviously, protein is there to grow muscle. It's more filling, and obviously carbohydrates and fats have their time and place, obviously for energy and then hormone regulation and all that stuff. But your diet, to mainly focus on preventing injury, you need to make sure you're not only consuming enough carbs to run and fuel and function as a human being when you're running, obviously enough fats to regulate your hormones and all that good stuff, but mainly the priority is protein. If you're not eating enough protein, your body isn't going to be able to rebuild and strengthen your legs, your bones, all that stuff when it comes to training. So just like if you would eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight if you're trying to build muscle in the gym, same goes with running. But obviously you're not prioritizing on hypertrophy, you're prioritizing endurance, growth, and strength. But that goes under the radar too. A lot of people forget that running is obviously cardiovascular, and you're training your heart. Your heart is an important muscle to train too. And just like every other muscle in your body, your heart needs protein, carbs, fats, all that good stuff, along with your legs and all that. So another way to stay injury free is make sure you're nourishing your body, eating enough protein, carbs, fats, and obviously calcium to keep your bones strong and healthy, and a bunch of all the amino acids, vitamins to keep your body functioning and working properly through your endurance training. The most slept on piece of recovery or thing that you can do to prevent injury by far that has changed the game for me is stretching and massaging. I know nobody does it because it sucks. It does suck. It hurts. It just feels completely unnecessary. And if you do it a handful of times, you don't really see any results. But promise me, you're going to do it because it is a game changer. When I was playing football, back in grade 9, 10, 11, 12 in high school, I used to have the worst knee pain in the world, and that simply stemmed from every other muscle and bone and joint and ligament in my legs being tight and sore, leading to extremely high amounts of pain in my knees, both of my knees. And I just thought it was a chronic issue. I saw nobody else on the team was struggling with it, obviously knee pain, except for me. So I tried to hide it, but obviously it's hard to hide from that knee pain. I remember one night at dinner, I was just complaining my butt off to how much pain I was in, because obviously not just the knees itself, but football is a pretty physical sport, so you're hitting each other nonstop. So I'm complaining, and my dad's like, you should try stretching, because my dad was also a football player when he was younger, and he also said like he would never stretch when you're young because you usually get away with it when you're younger. That's just how it works. But as he's gotten older, he said he needed to stretch in order to feel decent when he was weightlifting in the gym, etc. So he's like, here, I'll run you through my little stretching whatever routine and then see how it works. I was like, you know what, the worst thing that could happen is I just go to practice feeling the same anyway. So I did it, and literally that same practice, the day of practice where I stretched first, I had little to no knee pain, which at first I was kind of surprised with, but over time it made more and more sense, because if you think about it, your knees are just a conglomerate of muscles, joints, tendons, and ligaments. And if one part of your leg is sore or stiff compared to another, or if they're all sore and stiff, or just inflamed because of high repetitions or activities, it's going to lead to issues elsewhere. Either you can compensate for it in a slight adjustment of form that your body will just do naturally, or as in pain. And that is usually what stops a lot of people from training so hard, is a lot of these pains. That's why I think it's so important, because obviously keep your muscles and bones and joints loose and nimble so you can keep running, but also to keep injury free and keep yourself feeling okay and decent. Don't forget, your muscles are another biological process, and through training them, they're going to have a byproduct of soreness, lactic acid buildup. Obviously those go away with time, but if you're on a training block, you might not have that. So, and there's a lot of bones, joints, and ligaments, especially in your feet, toes, tops of your feet, and then obviously in your hips, your knees, bunch of muscles going down your glutes, your quads, your calves, your shins, and if one of those is sore, it can cause a bunch of issues elsewhere. So what I recommend is every night I do about 20 to 30 minutes of static stretching. That is, I put myself into a position of a stretch, stay there for 20 to 30 seconds, and then come back out. I do static stretches every night, and then also before my runs, I do a couple dynamic stretches. I do leg swings, I do lunges, and massage. I have a massage gun. You don't need a massage gun, I'll put that out there, but it does help if you have one. But all you really need is a floor, your two legs, and maybe an old lacrosse ball or foam roller. A lot of people have told me that if they have shin splints, a good way to fix that is just rolling out your calves. I know that's completely antagonistic almost to roll out your calf muscles when your shins hurt. But as I said, all of these things in your legs especially, there's so much going on in there with the ligaments and joints that it's all interconnected. And you got to trust me on this. I know it sucks, but stretch and massage, it goes miles and miles into helping you stay injury free. The last thing I want to touch on when it comes to staying injury free is kind of a conglomeration of I don't know what I'm saying. A joint point to everything that I've already stated, and that is to be smart with your training. You can do all these things right, but there can always be, it just happens to you that you can go off the rails and get knee deep into a terrible injury, right? There's a lot of niche things that can happen as a runner. Obviously, you need to be smart enough to not only know when you're getting injured or know something's happening, but to also be smart enough to stop if you see anything that's going wrong. I always tell people who ask me for advice that you need to stay disciplined to train. And that's where a lot of people think the discipline is for, just to get out there and to keep training day in and day out. And for most people, that's what it is. That's the hardest part, and arguably it is. But I also say you need to be also disciplined to take rests, to let your body recover from all this training that you're doing. It is so easy to get dragged into the Goggins, I call it the Goggins mentality, where you just repetitive cycle of go, 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 and you ignore all these little things that develop into bigger issues that can stop you from running for even longer. So obviously you got to get good at it, and it's almost a skill, but over time you're going to get better at it because you're going to end up getting these little nicks, pains, whatever. That's just the name of the game. That's just what's going to happen with life. You're going to run and you might step in a pothole and tweak something in your foot, or you might step really awkwardly one time and feel something tweak in your hip. And you have to know the difference between a pain that will go away, that's fine, or the beginning of an overuse training injury. And obviously when you begin, that's going to be kind of difficult, but it does get easier with time, that you know that there's difference between pain and an injury that's coming on. And obviously, if you do feel any of that, you need to slow down. I have a buddy who I used to go to school with who told me, he's like, yeah, he's comparing himself to me. And obviously, first off, I told him, like, you need to stop comparing yourself, because comparison is really the thief of joy. But what you do need to do is you need to gradually increase your volume, because your body's not used to it. And then he texted me back, he's like, my foot kind of hurts and I ran on it this time, but I made sure to go slower. And I'm like, okay, you already did something wrong. Yeah, it hurts. You need to stop running now. And I know that might sound excessive, but if you keep running on something and keep doing the thing that not only has injured it, but just going to continue to injure it even more, you're not just going to be more injured, but you're going to take yourself out for a lot longer than you would have if you would have just stopped right there and took a few days to recover. That's what goes back to my other point. You need to be disciplined in training and also recovery. And you don't have to always think that running is the only way to train. Obviously, it's the most important one if you're trying to train in running. If you're trying to go into the gym and weight lift, that's going to be the most important. If you get an injury doing that, you just avoid training it. Obviously, it's not rocket science. But if you're running and you get an injury that only hurts when you run, don't think that running is the only way to train getting better aerobically. There you can do stationary bike or elliptical work, or even some light body weight movements here and there that just get the heart rate elevated. Obviously, getting your body used to the running impact and running itself is the best way to train for running, clearly. That's not saying that there's other tools in your arsenal that you can use to improve running as well. So obviously, if you're training a bunch, a rest day is a must, especially in high volume training sessions or blocks of training. But also, if you feel something coming on, don't be afraid to cross train. Like even today, it's downpouring rain outside. My hip kind of hurts. That's obviously a pain, that's not an injury, but I can feel a large accumulation of fatigue, and it's been over a week since I took a rest day, so today I just cross-trained on the bike. I did a lot of low impact, steady state cardio. I'm still getting the cardiovascular and aerobic benefit, but I'm not overusing and overtraining myself. So that finishes up this video, and the last topic, which is you just need to be smart. You need to be smarter than your injury, and you need to be smart enough to train properly. So I hope you guys got even just a little bit of value from this video. Obviously a little different from what I normally do. We'll get back to the days in the life if you guys want that. Days of eating, days of training, all that stuff. But personally, I just find it a little boring because it's what I do day to day. But I'll get back to those. I'll get back to doing all this stuff. But I hope you guys learned something from this video. If not, then I don't know. I guess I just suck. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope this helps. I hope you guys keep training hard, keep training smart, keep training disciplined in the training and recovery aspect. And hope you guys all have a great, blessed rest of your day.